Welcome back, Kayla. It's great to be on the other side of the table again.
Thank you, Pete. It's good to see you. Can you believe we are recording the last episode of season one?
What an amazing journey it's been. I look back at some of the topics that we've covered and some of the rabbit holes we've gone down, and it's really been great to get so much feedback. It seems like we've definitely touched a nerve for some people and definitely actually provided a lot of value, I'm sure.
It's been really good. 12 episodes, and we are on to the last one. I can't believe it. And I look back at us as well, like when we first started versus where we are now. Like, very, very cool. It's been a really good experience. But you won't be done with us after season one. We've already planned out season 2 and 3, did our planning session a few weeks back now. So it's going to be very cool. We'll go into what you can expect in season 2 at the end of this episode. But we're finishing on a high this episode. So we're going to be talking about future proofing your MSP or your TSP. But before we do, Pete, what have you been up to and what have you been watching, listening to, reading, all of those good things?
Look, for me, we've got some exciting things coming up from a digital team perspective, and I'll be heading to Sri Lanka in a couple of days' time for some of those things. I can't; they're under embargo at the moment, but they will actually be, watch this space.
Ooh.
It was an unplanned trip, so we always do what we call an epic event every year, which is our end of financial year party where we take over a resort and kids are in the pool, a bit of tug of war, water bomb fights, and plenty of whiskey. But looking forward to getting across there. But look, I think I've recently been traveling a lot and had a lot of chance to do some reading. And something up your alley, Kayla, that I was reading is a book called Account-Based Marketing. So we're building out some marketing plans as we start to finalise everything for FY26 and look at doing some things differently. And I got recommended the book. It's really just thinking about, well, how do you get very specific on particular organisations and how do you go and target them? So rather than a broad target, being very, very laser focused. But what have you been up to, Kayla?
Well, I've been doing a lot of traveling as well. It's been quite a hectic couple of months, but I'm looking forward. Like we're coming down to the end of the financial year now, and we're in June, so it's. I'm actually happy to have a month at home. Although I have already got a trip to Sydney planned in June, so that will be good. But I am really have been enjoying a new AI tool called Fixer AI. Um, it's like an EA, but an AI. And we talked about this in our previous episodes or actually a few of our previous episodes around, how AI is basically taking over the world. And this is no different, but it's actually sensational. And it is honestly helping me. Sometimes I think with AI tools, we've spoken about this, you have to train them a little bit. And as a very busy business owner, sometimes don't have the time to put into it. It's actually just right off the bat, like, just helped me. It organizes all my emails, it tags my emails, it creates potential draft responses. So I can often go in there and just edit that draft a little bit and send off what I need to send off without having to put too much brain power into it. So it's definitely something I would recommend if you're a busy business owner and you feel like you do need that AI. Give Fixer AI a bit of I give it a bit of a try.
Yeah, I think any tool like that that can just give you those extra half an hour back, even if it's only half an hour a week, is so valuable because I think as business owners, we're already running at 120%. Let's face it, many of us are doing 60 or even more hours a week in order to try and keep on top of things. So just that half an hour back, either to invest back into those that are near and dear to you, or also use as a time to sharpen the axe because I think we're so busy chopping down trees, we often don't take the time to sharpen the axe to be more efficient. And I think tools like that are a great example. And I think that's a great way to set up this episode today.
Agree. I was just about to say that. It's a good way to think about it is what is sharpening the axe and what do you need to do? I think both as a business owner and as a business, as part of that business, what do you need to be doing to think about the future? And I think I'm just going to pull on a thread from you. You said you're going to do things a little bit differently next financial year with some account-based marketing. Like, you've obviously taken the time to have a think about that, what is and isn't working. I think, I suppose, what do you see as the valuable things that you need to be focusing on to stay ahead of the market, particularly in this market, Pete?
The thing for me is just having time and space.
Mm,
And whilst I'm actually in the cut and thrust of the day to day, operationally it's very, very hard. But for me, it's just taking in different data points, whether it's a book or a podcast or talking with colleagues, just to take those signals in. And there'll be something that'll trigger a thought. And that for me, it's then diving into that and understanding that more. And that was just that account based marketing was just a throwaway comment with someone I was at the rugby with, and they mentioned that they were doing that. And for me, it says, that resonates. Let's go and deep dive into that and try and pinpoint
yeah.
what that really means, because what they were talking about sounded interesting, but in my own head, I couldn't work it out. And it's just creating that time and space to be able to do that. And I think as business leaders, we need to create time and space for ourselves to really just be understanding what's happening in the broader market, what's happening in our industry, what are those changes that's happening, because you can't be across everything, but
Yeah.
it's then what are those little things that you're going to start to investigate and try and optimize.
And what do you think they are at the moment, particularly in the TSP space? Because there's a lot going on.
Look, we can't not talk about AI. Like AI is
We're 6 minutes
literally,
into the episode.
yeah. Like I'm surprised it took us that long to put those two little letters together. But look, I'm really excited where we're going with this. And look, as many people know, I'm a big HubSpot fan, and I love
Yeah.
using HubSpot as a tool. And all of a sudden, I've seen the AI capability of summarizing a deal.
Breeze AI, yeah.
Yeah, so all of a sudden at the top of a deal, I get to see an entire summary of everything that's happened in that deal there. So, rather than scrolling through and seeing all the different email threads and when did this person first engage with us, all of a sudden it's then, straight away at the top there.
I think as a business owner, though, that's really helpful for you because, at the beginning of this episode, you talked about making time and space. That's really where I think AI plays that part, and it gives you, if you don't have to go and scroll back through the deal history and read the notes that the salesperson's taken on the customer and all of that stuff, and Breeze can do that for you, then, it's that is what is going to give you that time and space back.
I actually really like the way that Microsoft has termed Copilot, because I think it really describes what AI does. So if you think about, a pilot in a plane and a
Yeah.
co-pilot there, the plane, I was actually learning to be a pilot at one stage before I realized that I'm having a daughter, and maybe actually putting myself up there at 30,000 feet is not the optimal thing to do. But I remember all these dials and gauges and lights and all this information that's coming at me. And I think about a co-pilot there that allows all of that decision-making process to help support you and be more efficient and focus on what really matters. And I think that's really what AI is enabling you to then go and take a signal, be able to process that and distill that down into a really quick and efficient way of achieving an outcome.
Yeah, so I think the emerging trend, that I suppose I asked you about, is how are you utilizing AI in your business to help you focus on the things that really matter in your business? So that is the emerging trend, and that is, it's not necessarily how do you sell more AI as a technology business, but how do you utilize it? Because if you can utilize it in a way that it makes your business more efficient, and it makes you more efficient as a business owner, it's going to make it 10 times easier for you to give that as an example to your customers as well, which is then going to help you with the sale of AI.
But I think it's then, I always think about drinking your own champagne.
Yeah.
Yeah, being able to then understand how you can use it in order to be able to sell it. And I think that, as you said, actually almost bringing a customer in and go, look at how
Yep.
we're using this.
Exactly.
And almost being able to imagine if you were able to use it like this to be able to drive that. And I think, Little light bulb moment went off for one of our customer success team yesterday. Like we are very much trying to embrace everyone using AI and being as efficient as possible. And I remember just this little light bulb moment that they clicked on the Copilot button in Teams, and all of a sudden, started to transcribe the Teams call. And so you get the Copilot window, that the pane that pops up on the right hand side, and then them realizing that they could then summarize this meeting and all of a sudden get all of the action items that came out
Perfect.
directly
Yeah.
with that. So rather than madly jotting down lots of notes and action items and things like that, they could be more engaged with who they were talking to, knowing that someone else is going to do all of the heavy lifting and hard work for them. So create a better customer experience, but also then probably be more accurate in the process, capturing
Yeah.
everything that needs to
Yeah.
be done.
It's almost like their job is to have the good conversation and Copilot's job is to take the
Yep.
notes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Pilot and
Yep.
co-pilot.
Exactly. Exactly. I think there's a focus as well, just moving on to the next thing. I think there's really that focus now on compliance.
Yep.
So we're seeing so many more, um, businesses becoming, oh my gosh, I've had ISO
Mm.
compliant and, 27,001
Mhm.
compliant. And, I was having a really good conversation with a customer the other day around the, um, there's so many different cybersecurity compliance standards and things like that. It's so
Mm.
confusing for a small business owner to go, which standard do I actually need to
Yeah,
be compliant
is it
with?
essential aid? Is it NIST? Is
Exactly.
it
And we ended up writing a really good article around
Mm.
it. But I think as there is that shift now to being compliant, and I think we're seeing customers starting to ask questions about, are you guys ISO compliant? Or, I need this
Mm.
in a tender response and things like that. I think, why are we seeing that? Do you think customers are more risk averse and that's why they're asking for that type of stuff? And how do businesses survive that? Because, I looked into it. ISO compliance is not a cheap, and you've
Mhm.
just been through it, a
Yeah,
digital
we
team.
have. Yeah, we're
Like,
actually going through SOC 2 at the moment as well. So,
it's not a cheap exercise to go
mm.
through that. So I suppose, what's the point?
Well, I think that governance, risk, and compliance has been driven by regulatory change. I look at what's happened in the UK, where traditionally anyone could go and set up shop and call themselves an MSP. There was no formal accreditation. You think about, to be an accountant, you need to either have a CPA or you need to have a chartered accountant in order to be able to then call yourself an accountant. Legal practice has then, various regulations and compliance to be able to call yourself a lawyer. Even a plumber needs to go through certain certifications to be able to call themselves a plumber. However, technology has never had that. And in the UK, what's happened is they're now starting to introduce those minimum levels of compliance in regards to then, the demonstrated ongoing education, the demonstrated capability that you have inside of the business. And what I'm expecting to see is that, we typically follow what happens in overseas, that's going to come here. But it's also the cybersecurity risk as well, as that insurers are driving that. So, customers with their own cyber insurance are then, giving questionnaires and educating people to then ask about, well, does your supplier have that? But also some of that risk is being passed through the supply chain as well, which is why there's more of that awareness. And even just a couple of days ago, the mandatory within 72 hours, if you get ransomware and pay that ransomware, you then need to notify the Australian government within 72 hours of that. So, governance, risk, and compliance is really changing the landscape about just keeping up to date and being aware of what's happening, because just saying I don't know is not a legitimate answer,
Mm,
especially in a court of law.
mm.
Negligence is not a result of just going no, I didn't know. But it's also then, I think that a bar is being set, because as competitors start to move there, you almost get left behind if you're not keeping up with the herd.
Yeah, yeah, wow. It's definitely. it's definitely something I'm seeing. And, speaking with our friend Jason over at ISO
Mhm.
365, shout out to the ISO 365 team, he's busier than ever.
Mm.
So I think it's definitely something that we're seeing shift. What else are we seeing, Pete? Like what is something that's going to future proof us as we move forward?
Look, I think the interesting thing, and it might be a little bit controversial as well, is that the service desk is eroding away.
Yep, I 100% agree with this. I was having this exact conversation the other day.
What was our traditional money making machine of providing support and services as an IT business is slowly eroding. The market data is showing that the ability to make money out of just providing support is eroding faster than ever.
Yeah. And I think it comes back to our AI point the other day, right? Oh, not the other day, 5 minutes ago. It's really simple things that you needed a human to do even 2 years ago. We've got AI handling that now, a password reset, the ordering of a new computer on that procurement side of things, basic questions about how to do something or how to, restart something or install something. That's all being taken care of without a human even looking at it now. And I think the faster that the TSP market can see that and reshape their businesses to accommodate that, I think is going to be what helps them survive. And we're also seeing now a shift in that customer expectation that they want that instant AI answer. Like for our customers, I suppose, it's they want that instant gratification. They don't want to submit a ticket anymore, and they don't want a human to call them in 4 hours to fix the problem. They want it fixed right away. So a human is just not capable of doing it that quickly. So they have to implement things like an AI service desk to, solve that problem and meet that demand. But it means that, sadly, the human element is getting eroded away. Like, they need to be retrained in something else.
But it's also things don't break. And
That's
things
so
not
true.
breaking, you don't necessarily need as much support. I was talking to a colleague yesterday over a few beers and reminiscing the good old days, the SBS server that would be sitting on-prem inside of all of your customers' environment, and the Monday morning chaos that would ensure because someone had turned the server off over the weekend, or unplugged it just to do the vacuuming or something along those lines. And back in those days, that desktop support, because everyone have the towers there, and in winter they'd put their jumper over the top of it so it'd heat up and all of a sudden stop working. Those style of scenarios just don't exist in the cloud anymore. And look, I've always been a born in the cloud organization. So even the Wardy IT Solutions Day, we were 100% cloud, and we were very, very early on with that. But I refuse to have anything on-prem or
Hmm.
anything server-wise. And more and more organizations, the amount of infrastructure that they've got, apart from networking equipment, there's really nothing on the edge anymore apart from that. So that though the fact that there's less equipment means that there's less problems and less things break. But also with M365, there's a lot of things that just magically happen that you don't need to do anymore. And how to justify the value that you provide to customers becomes very, very hard when often they were paying for an insurance policy. If it's broke, you're there, you're able to fix it. Well, it hasn't broken for the last 6 months. Why am I paying this bill?
I was having a great conversation with one of our customers probably a couple of weeks ago now. And it was really, I just love having conversations with people and actually just reminiscing and having, like you said you had, the other night at dinner. It, I just love having the people conversation about what they've seen change. And yeah, they're celebrating 20 years in business this year, which is just great for them. And we're having a big birthday party and all of this. Um, but they were saying like when they started the business, it was all on prem. It was, they had 12 people on the service desk and now they've got 4. Like it's just, and that's just because, not because their business has, reduced, it's because they've being able to pick up different technologies along the way, less things are breaking. So they don't need as many people as they used to. So it's really but I think that's almost what we're talking about, right? Like that ability to change and adapt as time goes on is really the key to your success, right? The only constant is change. So being able to adapt and overcome and reshape your business as you need to is really the critical component.
But it's hard to stay re-energized. If you've been in business, 10, 15 years, you've already gone through a number of changes that have really dramatically shifted. And often that ability to then, "Oh, I don't have enough energy to be able to then reinvent myself again." And, you could remain a typewriter on the old school typewriter, or you move to the word processor. And, there was a shift there. Was the word processor, the old Word Perfect 5.1 and things like that, was that better than typing? When I went through school, I was actually taught both how to use a typewriter as well as how to actually do some word processing.
Wow.
But the reality is that's where we are at the moment. Is we could continue to say that, yep, we're going to stick with typewriters because they're better, or start to just dip our toe in and just experiment and try different things, because the world is going to change around us, and it's our ability to stay evergreen that then is going to continue to then keep us then moving forward.
I remember one of my mentors and old bosses telling me that she went to a networking event, an industry networking event in the tech space. I I don't know. She told me this story nearly 8 years ago now, so it would be like 30 years ago that this happened. But she was saying she went to this event and some big sort of bigwigs from a fax company were there and they were talking about email. And I remember she was telling me that she was standing there and they said to her, "Oh, email's not going to go anywhere. Email's, that's just going to die." And now you look at that now and how could we not survive without email? It would, how could we, yeah, how would we survive without it? It's such an pivotal part of doing business and a pivotal part of our lives. I don't even know how to use a fax machine anymore.
What is a fax
Yeah.
machine?
It's sort of one of those things.
Quick segue though. It's interesting how different countries adapt at different rates. So we have some customers in the US and operations in the US. All communication with the IRS, so the Revenue Service, the equivalent of the ATO in the US, needs to be done by fax. So when we
So you know what a fax machine is.
I don't, but our advisors in the US thankfully do, because I don't even have a fax machine or a fax number. But so different jurisdictions, the fax machine is well and truly alive in the American tax system. That's for sure.
I want to bring something in actually that talks about something a little bit different, and it pulls a thread on your point around, do I have the energy to keep going with all of these changes? And I think one of the things that I think is going to be pivotal to the success of our listeners is that ability to rest and take time and carve out that time and space that you mentioned at the beginning of this episode. Like, I just think rest is so important, and getting that energy back and getting that space away from your business is part of the recipe here. I remember last year I was running really, really hard trying to grow the business. And, I was at that point where I was so burnt out. And I remember going into an advisory call with you and crying because I was so tired. And you just were like, you just need a rest. You need to take a break, like go away for the weekend, close the blinds, get some sleep and come back. And I did that. I actually, we walked out of that meeting. I booked a hotel. I went and I rested it was a long weekend, thankfully, coming. And I rested for 4 days. And that gave me that. It wasn't a complete shutdown, rest. I didn't come back to it, I would say, fully 100% rejuvenated, but it gave me enough to get through the next couple of months until the next rest, right? I think it is so important for business owners to go, I need some time away from the business, or I need to go and rest, or I need to go and spend some time with my family, because I think that is sometimes the thing that is forgotten. I think we can run so hard all the time, And burnout is a real thing. Like, you can get resentful towards the business, you can get tired, you can get teary, like, and all of that is really valid. But I think part of the recipe for your success, as I said, is taking that time to go and not do the business thing.
I always think that, business is not a sprint, it's a marathon.
Yeah.
And the reality is the same way that athletes have peak performance, we need to think about as business owners how we achieve our own peak performance.
Yeah, great way to put it.
You think about someone that, competes at the highest level, they compete at that level of intensity, but then they stop. They either take a rest. You look at a marathon runner won't run a marathon or even actually lace up the shoes for a number of weeks after running a marathon. An Olympic team that goes to the Olympics then will actually come back and do nothing, no training, nothing to be able to re-energize and rebuild that up. And the same way as business owners, it's like, how do you then obtain that peak performance? Because as you said, you can't constantly be doing those 60 hours a week, but also you're actually just focused on the lenses being on and in that stovepipe. You're not actually taking in other ideas, other signals. And it's amazing how often a great idea will come to someone just in the shower.
Yeah.
And that's because that, you relax, you're not trying to focus on anything else. And all of a sudden, the frontal cortex then starts to rewire itself and you then go, boom, there's a wonderful idea that's come there. So making sure that you are thinking about, how do you achieve that peak performance?
Yeah. And then also, I think making sure your team is also getting that rest as well, right? No one can run hard 24/7 or, 60 hours a week. It just is not sustainable long term. So making sure that your team is also rested. I think one of the things that I've sort of, done at inception is making sure my team are taking regular breaks as well. Like, if I see those leave balances start to creep up, I sort of have the conversation and go, you know, when are you thinking of taking the next time off? And most of my team are really good at sort of planning out their own breaks, but it's probably more so than myself. But it was a really hard lesson last year for me to go, okay, I actually need to schedule the time off. And I think we spoke out at the beginning of this episode about how May's been quite hectic and we've both been running quite hard. So making sure that I get that break in the next couple of weeks is going to be critical for me, I think.
Yeah, look, I'm definitely looking forward to a break. I'm taking the girls with Julianne across to Hong Kong Disney on the way across to Sri Lanka, and we're going to spend a week touring around Sri Lanka on holidays as well, enjoying some amazing sights, amazing pools, and just relaxing with a lot of curry and a lot of lime lager.
Love that. Love that. So I suppose to finish off this episode, what do we think that MSPs can do to really stay ahead of these curves that we're seeing with these trends coming down the line? Do you think it's really about just like educating yourself, like you said at the beginning, like taking that time and space to actually go and learn about what's coming down and how they could potentially implement it into their businesses?
I think there's a couple of things to sort of think about as we sort of wrap the episode up, but one is talking to your customers. Understanding what are they wanting, what are they thinking about, because it's easy to sit behind the keyboard, just delivering a service without really just getting those insights. I think that's probably the first thing is like, what are they thinking about? Like, what's top of mind from
Market
them?
research.
Yeah, from a compliance perspective, how are they thinking about the shifts in technology and the democratization of AI and data and things like that. So thinking about that. But also thinking about, well, what are those other peer groups that you can be part of? But also not necessarily just technology peer groups. Being able to see what happens in other industries as well. So, whether they're organisations like YPO or EO or CUB or insert other three-letter acronym here, being able to actually take insight from other industries is often super valuable to see, what's someone doing in construction, what's somebody doing in the retail sector, all of those other industries, and, how do those trends and how do those insights then apply directly to my business and my industry sector as well.
Yeah, what can I take from them? Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Pete. That was brilliant. I think what a great way to finish our season. I think, I think sometimes it's nice not to just talk about the tech side of things. It's actually nice to talk about what might be coming and how businesses can use that and what that means for the business owner. Should we give them a bit of a sneak peek into what's coming into season 2?
Oh, you've been teasing me all episode. You spoke about it at the start, and I was biting my tongue all episode. So, do you want to break the news?
So, season 2 will be coming. We're going to start recording. We're taking a little bit of a break. We're going to take a month off, as we just spoke about. It's going to be really, it's important that we take a break. So, we are going to be taking a break through July, and we're going to start recording in August. But we're going to be talking with a series of founders. So, we're calling it the Founder Series, and we've also got something else happening in season 3, but we'll leave that for now. So, we've lined up a bunch of wonderful founders of their businesses who are going to come into the studio with us, talk about their experiences, what they see coming, how they've built their businesses. So it's set to be a really, I think, rich season of insights. You're going to be hearing from them about what and potentially being able to take away things about what they've done in their business and implementing it into yours. So it's not just going to be the two of us talking.
No, I'm really excited to be shifting gears. And I think over this series, everyone's got some insights from the experiences that Kayla's had in her business life, the experiences I've had in my business life, and really great to be able to bring those other experiences. And I think it's those little nuggets, those little 1% of the tips and tricks that we'll learn from then, sharing those experiences to really, continue to keep your business evergreen and continue to set yourself up for the future.
That's it. Well, thank you for a wonderful season 1, everyone. Thank you, Pete, for being my amazing co-host. It's been really good, and we can't wait. Well, like we said, we're going to take a quick break, and we cannot wait for season 2 to start recording.
And thanks so much, Kayla, for allowing me to be on the other side of the table and being your wing person through all these episodes.
Fabulous. Well, thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.